Well, good evening to you and welcome to this program of Walter Rodney Groundings. I'm your host, Dion Abrams, and as usual, my guest is Brother Takuma Ugunse, and together we'll be talking about general issues that are current in the political sphere here in Guyana. Welcome to Walter Rodney Groundings, Brother Takuma.
As usual, it's always a pleasure to be here so that we could continue the work.
Yeah,
Persons have been calling, and congratulating us on the last program.
okay, okay.
So sometimes it's good to, they want me to acknowledge it, I don't know, the
That,
self-acknowledgement you don't like, but when people insist that you must say it, you gotta say it.
yeah, well, you normally get the feedback from folks who have listened and some people have been calling for us to open the lines and so on. But we haven't given that consideration full thought, primarily because, as Brother Wogan had explained, we don't want to have people come on here and say things that are going to jeopardize the station in this current political sphere that we have. There is no delay system here, so that whatever people say is going to go straight
Straight.
out to the public, and we don't want to have any person coming because the station will be liable for that. All right, but nonetheless, you can always give us our feedback. The lines, my telephone is 6627529, and of course, those who have organs can contact him if you want any matter raised on the program. The Catholic Standard has lost a stalwart, Colin Smith. Owen, you might have had personal experiences with him.
Well, I knew him. I never really had very close personal relations with him, but you knew him as a dedicated journalist working with the Catholic Standard, and of course, in the period of the civil rebellion and so, the Catholic Standard, was very
Active.
active and very instrumental,
Yeah,
and himself, along with Father Morrison, was two of the key figures in keeping that newspaper relevant and so forth and so forth. Um, I've been reading a lot of the tributes, the few, that capture his personality. He's a very quiet, soft-spoken. They always had a kind of suppressed, interesting smile,
yeah.
you
Okay.
know. Um, but for some reason, I'm trying to recall if we have actually ever had any significant discourse, and I can't remember. But I remember one particular incident that always stuck in my mind relative to him, and of course it involved Freddie Kissoon. In in that period, Kissoon and I myself was very close and so, and he wanted to get confirmation of a meeting that he heard the WPA had, you know. So he decided that he's going to bring Smith and himself turned up at my home in Kitty, and he confronted me with the question. But the answer that I give him, he didn't expect. It wasn't what he was looking for. And I always remember seeing Smith suppressed smile, and that image stuck with me. Freddie was trying to use him as as evidence to support
What
his
he was,
contention
right.
that I said X about the WPA and this so-called this alleged meeting, and that incident stuck in my mind. He never uttered a word, but just this suppressed smile.
I
He's a
guess
nice brother, man.
he understood
Yeah.
the shrewdness. Well, from
So
all the comments you've been reading on Facebook, the tributes that are being paid. He was a person that I never met him personally, but I would always know I read the Catholic Standard during that time, as much as I read the Day Clean and the Open Word, even though they were small.
yeah, those were the three major papers at the period.
They carried a lot
And
of
of
weight.
those.
Yeah, man,
Yeah.
a lot of weight in the society. So we must laud his contribution to the struggle and to upkeeping the Catholic standard. And
Yes.
really, it's
Yeah. So I want
sad
to
that we have
formally give the WPA condolence and this program was Rodney condolences to his relatives and his family, his friends, his colleagues in the press association and the media fraternity in general. You know, it's a great loss, and on the behalf of the party and the program, we extend our deepest felt condolences. You know.
the any developments on the Boston killing that you heard, Brother Woodman?
Well, I'm still waiting for the African community to deliver to us the name of this killer.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and I find it very strange that we can't get the name. But more equally important is the fact that we hearing from the authorities, the police complaints committee, the DPP, on who is this person. You know, and more and more as the days pass by, one get a, I become more firm in my conviction that the government and the PVP and them had a role in this killing.
Yeah.
I find it hard to believe if they didn't have a role that they would be going out of their way
To
to
protect.
protect this killer. You know, so I stand firm in my judgment. You know, that they had some involvement and they are deliberately protecting this gentleman.
But what about the integrity of the police force? I mean, a lot has been uh, happening recently in relation to the police, and some striking revelations have been coming from former Assistant Commissioner um, Paul Slow in relation to people like Hicken and so on. And the questionable nature of these elements who are now heading the force, and their apparent allegiance to the regime, how well does that augur for the citizenry? Obviously, we get the impression that they are willing to do the biddings of the administration. So, where do we stand as a people who are dependent upon this entity that is supposed to serve and protect?
No, I think it is clear those are corrupt officers that have been corrupted over the 23 years of the PPP. They're well groomed and they're well conditioned to support the PPP. But you see, the problem I have with waging at this present a significant campaign against them is that they survived 5 years of the APMU AFC government to which WP and I was a part.
Okay.
And to beat the PPP, you know, for retaining them, when you party and the government that you are attached retain them, it weakens your position. But we know that, of course, they're there to do the PPP biddings, and it's bad for business. And they will continue to corrupt the police force, and the citizenry will suffer, you know, in all forms. And we have to prepare for a very dread period with these the resurfacing of these questionable characters, and the fact that the state and the PPP, the government, seems bent to go down the old road. It is not like though with the APMU they were retained, but at least the policies of the government and the practices of the government made it very different, restricted the activity.
Yeah, yeah.
But they're not only now retained, but they retain back in the old context
And culture.
and culture of the PPP. And this is what's bad for business. But my big problem is they should have been thrown out the force while the APMU AFC was in government.
But they have sidelined and people who had potential, people like this, what's his name? They sent him to the Civil Defense Commission or something like that. Or, he has his masters and all of that. his name. But many of the other people who were potentially in line and who were more qualified, they simply have sidelined them and cast them into areas where they are playing no significant role really. All right, Paul Williams, he was a student of Guyana Secondary School in his time. I remember him coming to address our speech and prize giving ceremony and so on. But this is the situation that we face, and if you had listened to recent discourses by Paul Slow, you would know that the commission was basically sidelined and pushed aside because they didn't want eligible officers who were qualified and who did not have a record that is unblemished. Those who were qualified and did not have a blemished record to be cast aside so that they can put those who possibly they have something against and can control in the positions. And the striking thing was the interview he said he had with the president when he came into office and deliberately asking him to promote certain people. Now, we've heard of instances where police officers who were put in the police force, and I'm wondering, why it is that this should be allowed to happen, who went into the force and within 2 weeks or so on, they were promoted to sergeant, and some of them from corporal to inspectors and all of these things. That is supersession, all right? Now, why is it that the others who are in the force, who are supposed to be senior to them, are allowing them to give them instructions? If that happened to me, I would tell you plain that, I'm senior to you, you can't give me instructions, I'm not following the orders that you're giving. But why is it that people are allowing these things to go?
I guess they're cultivated in the institutions to accept whatever is the authority at the moment, and they want to be good, quote unquote, good police.
Good police?
That's a quote unquote. In the sense that they don't want to be rocking the boat and they don't want to be seen as a troublemaker, because in the context of it, once you stick for principle and so forth and you're fighting against the order, you're going to name me a troublemaker. That is the quickest thing. But I don't know for sure. Probably we got to try to get somebody who are more familiar with the police force. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it applies. I know there's some arrangements in the army. If you come as a cadet,
yeah,
it gives you some advantage in rank. I don't know if the police got the same kind of story.
The police normally would be trained as cadet officers also. Mm. But you have to go through the training. It's not an automatic, and you have to pass the course.
Yeah, we must do the police course.
To become a cadet officer, mm-hmm. whether in the police force or the army. But these are people who
just come off the road.
That's
interesting.
And those are the people that, really are involved in some of the acts that are
they're not recruited to be police officers. They're recruited to be political operatives. Operatives serve for the party and they're not police officers.
I was very disturbed by the fact that Paul Stowe turned up at the court for a charge, and they sent, obviously the racism in the act was evident by the fact that they chose an Indian officer who was the one who was carrying all the aggression, holding on to Slow and actually gripping him from his belt, mm-hmm. as though he was a criminal and so on, And the consternation in me, I don't know if I were there, I might have responded, mm-hmm. because I really don't understand that kind of thing. And then we have Jack View going to I think the surprising thing, they didn't expect that it would have played out that way, that it would have been on all the media cameras and so on, so that the world could see the nature of the administration again. But with all these revelations, you have a man like Jack View going to Ghana and touting that there is no racism in Guyana, that it was under the PPP that black people in this country saw the best economic life and development. How do you factor that?
Okay, Jack, they will not go to Africa and speak the truth. In fact, he will not even speak the truth from Guyana. So we shouldn't be surprised that he will go there and paint the picture that they normally paint. I mean, the PPP have never been able to come round to engage in any principle self-criticism of the rule and to recognize, and that's the difficulty I have with them, that the policies, and I believe the policies are very economic and social policies are very deliberate, had negatively affected the African community. They have never been able to come around to that. And you shouldn't expect Jagdeo to go to a foreign country and concede that, if he's not even conceding it in the domestic space. So I am not surprised by that. But the African condition under the 23 years of the PPP rule, okay, has distinctively been reduced, okay, to a level of poverty unprecedented in the modern history of the country. And it can't be denied. And how could they justify for many years not increasing public sector workers' salary to anything that is significant, and at the same time increasing that of sugar workers, okay, even at a point in time when the sugar industry is in a state of collapse? The sugar workers were one of the highest paid workers in the country. And we see more recently, the government haven't allocated money to pay public servants, but they find money and allocated money to compensate sugar workers who have already been, compensated for the redundancy and so forth and so forth. Now, if that doesn't speak, that speaks directly to the nature of the PP governance in this country. And he can't say that given the history of extrajudicial killings and the role played by the state, where hundreds of African young men were executed, okay, with the collaboration of the PPP state and the involvement elements in the PPP, unless you're reducing black lives to nothingness, then it doesn't matter. But once you factor in on that, it is clear. And at present, I have been saying it, and I want Jagdeo and others to challenge me, that at present you watch this economy in real terms. African and Amerindians probably hold about 10% of the economy. Indians, Portuguese, and now we got the Chinese and the Europeans, and so control the hulk of the economy. And I'm telling you, the shrinking involvement of the Africans in the economy took place primarily, okay, under the rule of the PPP. You see? So they can't say they don't victimize against Africans. The policy speaks for itself. And the only time what the PPP clearly have been doing is that to the extent that they do anything in the African community is is a way of bribery. They try to win them over to the PPP. It doesn't treat the African community as entitled to equality and fairness and justice. To the extent that you play ball with me, that's the extent you get something, But you go through all the African communities, whether in the city and the rural areas, and even if you look at the present approach, and we have to begin to discuss these economic things in a more profound way, there is no statement of recognition by this government that the inequalities in the economy, the ethnic inequalities in the economy, need to address, they haven't even begun to raise it as an issue, much just to formulate some, constructive policy to to address the problem. And until that is being put on the table, the PPP can't say, you know, it is dealing with African communities and Amerindian communities in any fair and just way.
But they're formulating plans for the sugar workers,
Yes.
who are primarily
Their supporters.
their supporters. And so they're moving them from sugar workers, cane cutters, and so on, and preparing them for the
Oil and gas industry.
oil and gas industry.
Okay.
Right? And a notable thing, there is the Board of Industrial Training that conducts training in different communities, provides skills training for people who might not have done well at CXC and so on. But it's notable that all of the announcements of training since the PPP came to power, they have held none in Region 4. They're all in Region 6 and Region here and Region there, where their supporters, where the base of their supporters are. And so again, that's a way of excluding the African community from benefiting from the government's resources via the training that would prepare them for the economy as it is developing on the oil and gas. Because the very things that they're talking about, welding and internet and all of these things, they're taking these trainings to basically, except for one, I think in one area, which Kokwani or someplace where they had trained the youngsters to, I don't even know if it was, they are the ones who did it, to fix these the solar panels, repair solar panels when they're damaged. Well, you check and see if you go through. And if I've always said that the key evidence of the PPP discrimination is the allocation of house lots. And my regret, and because the nature of our society, if you go to the communities, East Coast, Falls and all these places, it's dominated by East Indians, and then they put a sprinkling of Afro-Guyanese in there who, during times of trouble, have to leave their homes and run to stay with relatives in other communities because of the nature of our... And this has happened across the country. So where is the equity that they're talking about? And the fact that they haven't discriminated, all right? Of recent, they have been holding these massive sessions for giving away of lands, and they always make the point to interview Afro-Guyanese and so on, but they never publish the major figure of who really got what, how many people, and they will give you a figure, say so many lots were distributed, but you check
They give you the ethnic breakdown.
they don't give you the ethnic breakdown. And that is the thing that speaks a lot to their commitment to this talk of dealing with everybody in the same way. All right?
That's just rhetoric. And we are wrong long enough to know that that's rhetoric. But the reality speaks for itself. You look at the African conditions in all of the villages, and you would see. You see, there's some fundamental realities that we have to grasp with as a nation if we are to give justice to all the ethnic communities and so forth. We have to also recognize historical realities, and and how historical realities have shaped, and influenced the society. And it is duty of politics and politicians and leaders to recognize that and to seek to reshape the negatives to something that is more fair and more, in the national interest of cohesion and togetherness. Now, if you